Rookie Hunter is proudly brought to you by the Wild Sheep Foundation. If you'd like to support their mission to put and keep wild sheep on the mountain, you can go to wildsheepfoundation.org to become a member, renew your membership, or become a lifetime member. You can even get yourself some badass WSF merch. All of that can be found at wildsheepfoundation.org. And while you're there, check out Sheep Fever, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Foundation. The Wild Sheep Society of BC's Salute to Conservation and Mountain Hunting Expo is set for February 26 to 28 in Penticton. Details at wildsheepsociety.com. And check out our friends at North Arm Knives. From kitchen knives to hunting blades, they've got you covered from the field to the butcher block. Visit northarmknives.com. Episode 200. We did it. A lot of you figured it out. My guest today is Shane Mahoney. When I was thinking about who I wanted to have on, there was no question. It was Shane. I think so many of you were able to guess that because I've spoken a lot about the two chats that we had with him. I don't know why I've waited so long to get him back on. I think I was kind of hoping that we could do something in person again, but that's not always possible. But this was a great conversation, and I had a whole list of things I wanted to talk to him about, but I kind of narrowed it down and put the focus on him. I wanted to kind of hear a bit of his life story, his experiences in the outdoors, because he's had many and more than most people on this planet. And here's my ask of you for this episode. If you're like half listening and distracted, you're doing something else, hit pause right now. And pick this up when you have a moment to just like sit down, pour a nice glass of scotch, maybe put the fireplace on, and sit down and visualize these stories as he's telling them. Because I don't know, it's especially when he gets into his early life, it paints a picture of something that doesn't really exist anymore. And when he's talking about his experiences in the wild, there are few people on this planet who have done what he's done and who have experienced what he's experienced. So that's why I love this guy so much. And I don't talk much during this interview. I figured that's the way it was going to be, and that's how I wanted it to be. I was just sort of sitting here listening and taking in every word he was saying. So I know you guys will enjoy this one. And huge thanks to Shane for joining me. Before we get into the episode, we have some business to take care of. Holy cow, you guys really reached out for the knife giveaway, which is cool, man, because I see the download numbers and stuff. I know you guys exist, but it's really cool to actually like interact and hear from you guys and read what you wrote. So I've took me like an hour to get all these names together and all of your entries. So for each one, there was 3 things that you could do. For each one of those, you would get a name in the hat. And then if you guessed my guest, you would get another one. So a maximum of 4 entries there. I added everybody up. I made a list and I put them in to ChatGPT. And now this little robot friend of mine here is going to choose the winner right now. So I'm gonna do this live. Are you guys ready? I'm gonna hit go. And it's thinking, analyzing. Here we go. Something's happening. I was really thinking about it. Cody Wilson, congratulations. You are the winner of a one-of-a-kind Lynx blade from North Arm Knives. It's got the caribou logo on it. It's got the number 200. I'm kind of jealous, man. I don't even have one. I did all the work for 200 episodes, and you're getting the benefits of it. So congratulations. I'll send you an email, and I'll link you up with Mike from North Arm Knives. And we'll get that sent out to you right away. I'm going to read his email at the end here. I just got to find it. But sit back, relax, crack an ice cold beer, and enjoy episode 200 with my friend, Shane Mahoney. Shane, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Good. It's been a long time since we podcasted together. The last time was in 2019 at Sheep Show. We did it in person
Yes,
at the Pepper Mill. So
I
it's
do
been a
remember
while.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, it has. I just got back from the sheep show, actually.
I was going to ask, how was it?
It was, the usual bubble, high intensity,
Yeah,
it's the showbiz part of conservation,
for
and
sure.
so it's lots of exciting bids, lots of people spending money,
hmm
lots of upbeat attitude and so forth. So overall, another really fully packed event. I mean, the dinners, by the time the Friday and Saturday night dinners came, the entire main room of the pepper mill was full, and so I don't know what must have been in that room, 4,000 or 5,000 people, I
Yeah,
would assume, at that
crazy.
dinner. So it's really quite something. Yeah.
That's good.
Very successful.
Yeah, great. Did you attend the Life Members Breakfast by chance?
I did not attend the Life Members Breakfast this year. I often do, but this year I did not.
I was going to say, I was getting a whole bunch of text messages and phone calls that morning. Apparently, I was drawn for a desert sheep hunt, but I wasn't there, so I missed out. It was kind of disappointing.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. But
you can't be everywhere.
That's right. Yeah. So I hope it went to someone who was excited about it. I'm sure they are, but
I'm sure they were excited.
I'm sure they're glad I wasn't there.
I'm sure that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shane, this is my 200th episode of the podcast. And I wanted to have a special guest. And the first person that came to mind was you. So I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No problem.
So in the past, we've talked a lot about the Wild Harvest Initiative and sort of current conservation topics. But if you don't mind, I'd kind of like to go back and just talk about a bit of your early life and find out what shaped Shane Mahoney, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Great.
Well, that's fine.
You're a lifelong Newfoundlander, right?
I am.
Yep. Born and raised.
Bred and raised on the island of Newfoundland, and I will die here. There's no question about that. I have nowhere else that I wish to. I had nowhere else I wished that I was born, nowhere else that I wish to have lived, and nowhere else where I would have wished to have died than this place. It's a very special place to me.
Yeah, for sure. I've been there once, and it's truly unique and spectacular and beautiful and all those things.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. There's no question.
How did growing up in Newfoundland shape your connection to the outdoors?
Well, I said a little while ago on another, it wasn't a podcast, but it was an interview that I was doing for a film. And, I ended by saying there were two. Part of that film involved Dr. Valerius Geist, the man who first articulated the model. And I indicated there that there were two remarkable blessings. Perhaps the greatest blessing was in my life in some ways, obviously excluding my children and so on. But one was that I was born and raised on the island of Newfoundland. The second was that I met Valerius Geist and became such a close friend and partner of his and his family's. The opportunity to live on the island of Newfoundland, particularly when given my age and when I grew up as a boy, was to live the idyllic life of a child of any animal, which was one of absolute total freedom, total security, total access to wild nature at every turn, whether it was the sea coast or the rivers and brooks running to the sea, whether it was the headlands of those, the headwaters of those little brooks and rivers, or the lakes that they ran out of, or the forests that were present, or the pasture fields where the fox and the ravens and the crows and others would spend their time skirting the sheep and so on and so forth. The flocks of seabirds, the multitudes of whales and fishes, the community of people engaged in hard physical work who were all of them extremely capable woodsmen and hunters and fishers. Mm-hmm. The women who ran the homes and took care of the 8, 10, 12, 14, 18, can you believe it, 21 children that some of these families actually had. The rhythm of hard work and good humor and never complaining about the challenges that were faced by these people, and to come from a history of small boatmen who Winston Churchill called the greatest small boatman in the world.
Hmm.
It's quite something when the head of the British Admiralty, with all of their, let's say, sort of reputation and all of their ego,
Sure.
to actually be able to admit that another nation of men were actually the best small boatmen the world had ever produced. That was
Yeah,
really
yeah.
something. So I grew up in an absolutely idyllic environment where animals, wild and some domestic, were everywhere with us. Caribou and moose and bears less so on that peninsula where I lived earlier, but certainly partridge and ptarmigan and all, grouse and so on. It was simply an absolutely wondrous childhood. I can't imagine how anything could have been any more perfect. Every man we knew everyone in the communities in which we lived, of course.
Right.
There were very few vehicles, maybe one or two people had a pickup. That's all. Everybody else either rode in cart behind horses or walked, which most of us children did. And every home was open to us. If you went to your friend's house and your friend wasn't there, then immediately the parents invited you in, sat you at the kitchen table and gave you a big steaming cup of tea and a big piece of homemade bread lathered in butter and covered in molasses, and you sat there and ate that treat until your little friend came home from whatever he was doing. Every man above a certain age was an uncle, so if you saw Jack Smith, you would explain that you saw Uncle Jack Smith when you were out on your roundabout that particular day. And, if there were two Jack Smiths, then you had to differentiate between young Uncle Jack Smith and old Uncle Jack Smith, and so on. And this was the world in which we lived. The work was communal. The houses were built communally. The boats were fixed communally. The boats were launched communally. The fish food was shared, even to the point where when the fish was being laid out on the flakes and dried, a lot of women, of course, had a child every single cycle. That was normal in this culture in which we lived. So many women would have young infants at the same time. And when a baby would cry, they'd be set down while the women were doing all this backbreaking work, turning over the fish to dry it. When a baby would cry, the nearest woman would pick that baby up and put that baby to her breast, even though that child was not her own. So that gives you some idea, the communality and the kind of sense of community we had. Every birth, every death was a communal rite. Everyone was joyous over the birth of a child. Everyone was at a loss for the death of somebody, because everybody in that community was not only known, but everybody in that community was known for what they could do. The great carpenter, the great boat builder, the great fixer of whatever the particular electrical or other problem that you might have had. And so when the community lost someone, we knew immediately that there was a hole in that culture that was lost and had to be replaced by somebody coming up. The experience with nature, as I said, was everywhere. Out on the sea ice, playing dangerous games, jumping from piece of ice to piece of ice at 5 years of age, 6 years of age, learning all the different birds, helping to skin the birds and clean the birds, and getting the birds ready for food. All of our food was wild. There was very little domestic food except the few animals we raised and our local gardens. We were a completely self-sufficient, self-reliant, independent group of people, and we really, frankly, needed nothing from anybody.
Yeah.
And that is not common and has not been common anywhere in the world for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And we had that experience for 500 years on that island. And, the music was extremely important in our culture. Entertaining one another through a cappella singing, singing unaccompanied by music, and the famous mummering as we started, as people have come to hear of it. During the Christmas period, the people in the community would dress up in all kinds of crazy get-ups and go to one another's houses to dance and sing, and have the people in the house try to guess who their guests were.
Oh, okay.
And the only way to do that in the community where everybody knew everybody was, of course, for people to dress in disguise and to use different voices and so on and so forth.
Huh.
It's like something the world does not know today.
Yeah, it sounds like something out of a storybook. It sounds amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So that was what gave me and the sense of freedom. So you would leave your home and you would walk into the woods, or you would walk the beaches, or you would jump across boats, or you would fish for little different kinds of fish like sculpins and connors and tomcods and so on. Off the wharfs, you would fish in the rivers and springs for brook trout. It was just all nature was flowing around you, and nature was flowing through you constantly. And as a result of that, I came to fall in love with every aspect of the natural world.
Yeah.
The rivers that ran, to the birds that flew, to the fox that snuck around our hen houses. It was just a very, very natural thing. I had no more choice about the career I took than a calf being raised for the beef market.
Right. I was going to ask you if it was somebody in your family who introduced you to hunting and fishing, but it sounds like more of just a communal thing. It just was a part of life. Yeah.
Yeah. My father himself didn't hunt, and my mother was from Dublin, Ireland, and she didn't hunt. My father liked to fish, but he wasn't a hunter himself. But so many other people were that, it just became natural that you sort of fell into it.
Right.
And then when I went on to my career, working primarily in wilderness with big animals, wolves and bears and moose and caribou and so on, then a lot of the men, of course, and it was all men then, it's changed a lot in the profession now.
For sure.
These were all hardcore Newfoundland woodsmen. And so they were all hunters, of course, and they were all hunters because we ate all this food. There was no such thing as hunting for any other purpose. We hunted for no other purpose but to gather wild food, which remains an ethic of mine. And so when I joined that career as a wildlife scientist, I was lucky to have a huge amount of money at my disposal, and I worked only in wilderness areas. And I never saw roads, and I never saw other people. And that too gave me insights to animal behavior and insights to the country that, quite frankly, very few hunters will ever experience, because they go for much shorter periods of time. I would be gone with animals for months at a time.
Yeah.
And only part of that time would I ever be hunting them. The rest of the time I was simply studying them and trying to.
I was going to jump into your career, but one thing I wanted to ask first was, do you have an early memory of a hunting trip or a fishing trip that stands out?
Yeah, I got a lot of them, but ones that maybe have stood out, I suppose. I'd hunted other animals, but probably the first big moose that I ever harvested, I do remember being on a rise. I've been tracking these 3 or 4 animals for a while. This is in Newfoundland, the wet muskeg and so on. I mean, you can see their tracks, obviously, but it's a difficult terrain to walk over. It's extremely wet, sucking at your boots all the time. You make a lot of noise, even if you don't want to. But anyway, came to a place where either I had to go up this ridge or up that ridge to see if I could find them, capture them down below in the sort of draw in the wet country that they like to travel in with their long legs. Of course, it didn't bother them. And I made the right call. It was getting towards evening. Probably, that was in October, so probably maybe around, 5:30 or so. The light was still good, beautiful raking light across that gorgeous country with all the golds and siennas and the blues and the waters and a slight touch of frost around the edges of the rivers and so on. And those 3 animals were down there about 250 yards away. I had a new 7mm Magnum Remington,
Hmm.
and I looked for that bull. It was a young bull, an older bull, and a cow, as I recall. And I had lots of time. They didn't know that I was there. They didn't see me. And that's how I like it.
Yep.
And so I took very careful positioning and rested my rifle on my pack and lay down. Took a lot of time to size it up. Waited for that larger bull to sort of turn his head in such a way that I had access to a very good base of the skull neck shot. And I squeezed that trigger. And in that beautiful setting, that great big dark black bull, he just folded just like a leaf coming down to the ground. And I knew that I had killed him instantly. And so I chambered another, but as I walked towards him just to make sure, but I didn't need it. And he just lay there in this great significance, still warm. And for the very first time with a big animal, because I had, fished a great deal of my life, and so I saw, lots of dead. But for a big animal like that, I still remember feeling an instant that if only I could lift him back up again, because as magnificent as he was in death, he was far more magnificent in life.
Yeah.
But he was mine now, and I possessed him. Before that, he had been a part of the public trust. He was everybody's moose.
Right.
But now that I had harvested him legally, I was the owner. And so I started the process of butchering him. And that was a process I thoroughly enjoyed because I did a lot of that work as a laboratory student at university for many years. So I always took great joy in eviscerating animals and seeing what I could see, and eventually, dismembered this great bull. He was probably 1,200 pounds or so,
Right.
a fine animal, and began the process of getting him out of there. So that was one experience I will never forget, perhaps because it was the first, but also because I think he was so magnificent. I've shot a lot of moose since, or harvested a lot of moose since, but I don't think either one has yet meant any more to me than that first one that I took.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my first buck very, very clearly, and it's amazing how that it sticks with you, how vivid it remains after many, many years. So
Yeah, it's very true.
It's impactful. Yeah, and you did this on your own?
No, I had one other person with me on that particular trip. He was a field man who was doing some work with me, quite knowledgeable, and helped me butcher the animal. But there were many other circumstances where, with caribou, which are smaller and easier to handle,
Yeah.
I was by myself, and there were many other cases with moose than it was just myself and my son.
Okay.
We did the harvesting and the butchering and
Yeah.
so on and so forth. And
That's a lot of work with a big animal like that.
it is a lot of work. As
Yeah.
we like to joke in Newfoundland, the fun is over when he drops.
That's true. Yeah.
And but still, there's something really beautiful about the work that it takes to get them out, and
I agree.
and to skin them, and then to look after them, and to worry about whether it's too warm or there's too many flies, and you're protecting them. And it's your meat. It's not like going to a grocery store and buying meat. It is your meat, and that makes a huge difference, right?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
So, Shane, you said that your career path was chosen for you, and I believe you studied zoology and wildlife science, right?
I did. That's correct. Yeah.
And you did that in Newfoundland as well?
I did. I studied my honors degree and my master's degree at Memorial University of Newfoundland, and that seemed to be kind of natural. Well, first of all, we didn't have a lot of money, so
Right.
going to the local institution was, made a lot of sense, obviously.
Right.
But I was very fortunate in meeting some really great professors there. We had a lot of British professors there, for example, who introduced me to the British style of things. And then later, when I met Dr. Geist, of course, he was the universal man, and he knew all the systems, and
Right.
he brought me into a whole other world of discussion that extended way beyond just ecology into policy and politics, and all of the realities that surround conservation that most hunters don't think about at all, but which ultimately will decide whether or not they continue to hunt or not, whether in the United States or in Canada or anywhere else in the world. Social license is going to be required for this activity, and we are facing many, many challenges. They are growing, and in part they are growing because the social attitudes around and towards hunting are changing more rapidly. Change tends to become more rapid. It builds on itself. And secondly, the community of hunters, of course, is declining and aging out. And this is an inevitable biological phenomenon that we have to address. And so far, we've just not really come up with a recipe for addressing that, in a way that will make the big difference that we need, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Shane, you've in the previous 2 episodes we did with you, you shared some really incredible stories about your time as, I guess, doing field biology. I'm not sure if that's what you would call it, but you were observing incredible things, like you said, that most hunters won't see in their whole career of hunting. How much time were you spending out there observing?
For about 15 to 20 years, maybe 20 years, I would spend at least 6 months of the year in wilderness.
Wow.
And that wouldn't necessarily be continuous, but it would be broken up usually into seasonal trips. But it was at least that much time, and there'd be shorter trips interspersed with that. But they would be long enough, for example, that if I went to study the rut of the caribou, I'd be there for 3 weeks continuously to study that rut when it began through its full escalation into the frenzy of the rut, and then to watch it sort of die back. I would be in there at calving time long before the calves started to be dropped, and carry on all through the 4 to 5 weeks of the calving season until the calves were born, they were predated upon, and then those that were large enough to escape the predators began to, all of a sudden start to be integrated into the herd as newcomers into the population, that kind of thing. I would do the same in wintertime to see how they were handling the deep snows and the colds and the ice storms and so on and so forth that would happen. And this was all with very small numbers of men with me, or in some cases with no one with me.
Right.
Staying in very rough camps and so on and so forth, and just making your way out amongst the animals every day. What most hunters don't experience, of course, is they're often, in a lot of cases. In a lot of cases, they're guided to the places, by others who are knowledgeable about it, which makes sense. In other cases, there are local areas that they know quite well that they go to. But I was operating over the entirety of, the island of Newfoundland, which is 43,000 square miles.
Wow.
And almost all of the interior of that island, all the settlement is on the coast. And so the vast majority of the inside of that island, the guts of that island, if you will, is still extremely wild and unpopulated.
Right.
And to spend, day after day after day after day walking with caribou, and every day seeing hundreds of them around you, everywhere, on every skyline, on every valley, winding their way in front of you across those bogs with their tiny, flashets and small rivers and potholes and so on. When they would rest and sit down for their approximately 3-hour, kind of period of mastication and so on, and you sit down with them and boil your tea and watch them, just watch every aspect of what they're doing, the mundane as well as the exciting, the bears
Right.
approaching, the bears chasing, the bears killing, the eagles coming down to take the calves, these kinds of things. And then in the rut, the fights between the big males, the bluffings, the approaches, then the royal battles, the deaths that occurred during those time periods, the necks being broken, the animals being thrown. I can talk to a million hunters. They haven't seen these kinds of things.
Right.
They're so rare. You have to be there for so long, to see it.
When you're spending that much time out there, do the animals sort of just accept you as part of the landscape?
After a while, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, wild animals are always, whether it's bears or caribou or moose, and, they all have a different scale and level of tolerance. The bear and the moose, they're always going to be far more suspect. There's a reason why we were able to domesticate caribou, reindeer.
Right.
It's because they have this very different behavioral pattern from a moose or even mule deer or elk and so on, in that they're primarily an Arctic species, and they are primarily adapted to open country and are primarily adapted to a single predator, the wolf.
Right.
Caribou have tremendous faith in their ability to run and to walk and to escape, particularly on soft ground.
Right.
Their hooves are developed in such a way that allow them to do this. The foot loading is such that they float over these bogs much more easily than a chasing wolf with his tight-nested hoof, paws,
Sure.
that sink. And so for that reason, you'll often notice that caribou will form into little groups and watch you. And in fact, they may even walk towards you to get a better look at you, to wonder what's quite happening here, and so
Right.
forth. As a result of that, you get the opportunity to get extremely close to them. And then on other occasions, with caribou in particular, if they form into larger groups, then of course they become, there's a sense of ease with caribou as they have larger groups. And while moose form small groups, they don't form groups of 18, 50, 100,
Right.
Those kinds of things. And so those larger groups for caribou give them an added sense of security. And so you could do strange things with caribou. I remember one day, my son and I, he was about 11 at the time, and he was in with me, and there was just this big, broad expanse of caribou. This was during the rut. And after a while, you become very good at identifying where they will likely travel, what their likely
Sure.
way of coming towards you or going past you is going to be. And as a result of that, I said to him, Caleb, now come, we're going to do something really spectacular. I said, whatever you do, don't move. You just listen to me and trust me and do what I say. So it was very hummocky ground, as we call it. We call it gooety ground, but it has, bumps and then hollows, where old trees used to grow and have disappeared in ancient fires. Yeah. And so I got to where I thought they would all come through. There was about 1,000 of them. And I lay down very comfortably in this hollow, and I got Caleb to lie down very comfortably in this hollow next to me. And I said, now, whatever you do, no matter how close they come, no matter whether you can smell them, whether they drip, stuff from their nozzles on you, I said, just don't move. So anyway, we rested there, and then we waited, and I could hear them coming. And I had a Nikon camera at that time. I always did a lot of photography, and I had a 50 millimeter lens. That's all I had on, 50 millimeter lens. And I had that rested on my chest. And they knew, of course, that there was something not quite right about this. They couldn't see us because we were below ground and the bushes were growing up around us, but they still, of course, that big nose, they could tell there's something not quite right, but they couldn't see anything.
Right.
And so they kept walking and grunting and walking and grunting and jabbing their antlers at one another to get out of their way and so on. And some would trot and then stop and walk. And then finally, and I have these photographs, finally, a massive stag just simply walked completely and entirely over us.
Wow.
And when he was there like that, I actually had the camera ready and I took this photograph. And all you can see in this photograph is this massive nose and head, because he was so close to that 50 millimeter lens.
All right.
And then he walked over it, and we waited a while more, and some came close and some walked not quite as close as that to us, but right next to us. I mean, I could have grabbed hunting dozens of them for sure, easily enough. And so that would never happen with moose, and that would never happen with bear.
Sure.
It would never happen with lynx or wolves. But caribou could give you that kind of close approach. On the other hand, moose can do funny things too. A friend of mine shot a moose. It was his moose. He shot an animal. It was with a couple of bulls and several other cows. He took the cow for meat, and we had eviscerated the cow, and we're standing there, and all of a sudden we see coming towards us, rolling his big head and his big set of antlers, We saw this big bull coming, and we couldn't figure out what he was doing. The other animals had moved on, but he kept coming towards us. And finally we said, well, we're either going to have to shoot this bull, or we're going to have to get up in this tree, which fortunately existed there. And I said, I do not want to shoot that animal under any circumstances. We didn't have a light permit for that. We only had the permit for the cow. And so we climbed up this tree, and he strange behavior. He came back. The cow was eviscerated. She had been quartered and the head taken off. And those body parts were lying there. We were about to tie them up and put them on a trapdoir to move them. He just came back and spent almost 45 minutes to an hour sniffing and wondering about this cow, and then finally realizing that there was something up in this tree. And then he started to get a bit aggressive about the tree, and us actually.
Yeah.
And again, my friend wanted to shoot him. Again, I said no, we weren't going to shoot him. And in the end, he just left and walked away. So you will get situations with animals that are almost inexplicable. I've had bears that have, bluff charged me under circumstances that were unbelievable. We were doing some helicopter surveys at one point, and we were getting ready to have some lunch and pump some fuel in. And we saw a female bear. I saw her with 4 cubs, which is quite unusual. And they were 4 of last year's cubs, so very independent, big, round little fellows. And we got out and we shut down this big long ranger and, sat down on the step on the side and started to eat our lunch. And all of a sudden I looked up, and same time the pilot did, and he said, Shane, do you see what I see? I say, yes, I do. I see her now. And she started to walk towards us first. Now, her cubs had long gone. So her cubs were totally safe. There was no reason for her to have this kind of maternal defensive mechanism at play. And anyway, she kept coming and coming. I stood up. And he said, Shane, we're going to have to do something here, because she's going to come after us. And my son was there, and he was there. My son jumped up into the into the machine, and the pilot did the same. And I went out and I ran towards her, expecting fully that she would have turned and would have run. But instead of that, she popped her teeth and she woofed several times and she charged.
Jeez.
And now you got this great big long Ranger helicopter standing here. You've got 3 men and you've got cubs of last year that are in no danger, that have long run. And this female bear was doing everything that you would not expect her to do.
Right.
But she was just a hyper aggressive female, and I'd met them in that country before. There were several of them that I met, and she bluff charged a second time. I stood my ground, and then she slowly turned and made her way in a very stiff-legged walk, throwing the shoulder, and went back up over the hill and disappeared.
Huh.
So, animals are just always willing to surprise you, because I've also had bears come up and almost walk over me when I've been lying on the field, and they just never even. As a matter of fact, there was one time when myself and the pilot lay down in the afternoon sun, and I heard a rustling. The pilot was just asleep right there. He's a very good friend of mine. He's gone now. And I heard this rustling, and I looked over, and up came this great big, quite a large bear. We have very big bears on the island of Newfoundland, the island effect. And he came up, and he just walked past me and just walked between myself and my good friend, and just walked on past, never paid any attention, never sniffed my boots, never swatted me, never did anything, and just walked down over the hill again.
Wow.
So, so that makes them so beautiful. They're all individuals. They're like human beings. Every wild animal, yourself, if you know dogs or you know cats. Most of us know those two animals fairly well. They're complete individuals. Yeah. Each one of them. Like, you got one cat that'll be friendly and nice to you. You got another cat who'll live with you for 18 years and probably won't say hello any morning of his life.
Right.
I mean, that's what you got. And people are wild animals are just the same. Yeah. Bears in particular, you can watch them come across the country from a long distance. And once you get to know them, I worked on them for 25 years. I've been in their dens. I've held their babies. I've drugged them. I've carried them to places. I love bears. But you can tell when you see them coming across the country that you can have a problem with that particular animal, or alternatively, that animal is just going to be just fine and you're never going to have a problem.
Shane, like this is exactly why I wanted to have you on for the 200th episode, because your storytelling is incredible. I could just sit here for hours and hours and listen to you tell these stories. And I think last time we chatted, I said you need to do like a series of short stories in audio form and get all these, you did preserved somewhere. So I could listen to it forever. It's amazing, man.
It's a really good idea too. And I appreciate you bringing it up again, because I'm starting to think more and more of capturing a lot of the things that I did in my career. But you need to slow down a little bit, to be able to do that kind of thing.
Sure.
And, but I'm really thinking about it because not all of the things were so spectacular, but I really like the way you went back and asked me questions about how I sort of ended up where I did. And I'm being totally honest with you. Believe me, I'm not trying to pretend I'm something special. I just had no choice but to go into wildlife. I had everything to become a lawyer or a doctor, or everybody was pushing me to do these kinds of things. I just had no interest. All I wanted to know was animals. And to this day, I watch them relentlessly. I have ducks in a little pond behind my house. I have otters that come in and corral the fish in a little place, and I watch them feed. And I have kingfishers that feed in the same place. It's just, I could watch them for hours. As a matter of fact, in my view, if there is such a thing as heaven, and I'm a Celt, I'm not sure, I'm not really a standardly religious man.
Sure.
But in my view, if there is such a thing as a heaven, it would be for me to live in those circumstances I've just described to you forever. That to me would be a heaven that would be worth sacrificing anything to attain, to be perfectly honest.
That sounds perfect to me.
It does. It does.
That's what I fantasize about every day. I just want to be out there.
Yeah. All these religious, these religious leaders that are up there on the pulpits and so on and so forth, they should talk a lot more about that. You
Yeah,
talk
for
about,
sure.
right? I mean, this is what indigenous peoples talked about a lot, right?
Yeah,
You'll be in
yeah,
this place of plentiful game and plentiful, your horses would be healthy and, all of this. I mean, they had it right. This idea of getting up and preaching and saying, no offense, I hope I'm not offending you or your listeners, but, getting up and saying, you'll walk around and see, the face of God and all these holy people and so on and so forth, and all your friends. Well, I didn't spend all that much time with friends. I spent it all with wild animals. I
right.
prefer that they told me I was going to have that opportunity. And, it's the other thing about those stories. Well, first of all, they're true and they're so rare, and you have to be out there so much to have it. But and sometimes they're really simple little things. I remember another time. I don't know if I've told you any of these stories before or not. I apologize if I have, but
The two stories that we got from you, there was one where you were watching, you were observing, and a fox came up to you and sat right
yeah,
next to you, and he was watching. And
that
the
was
other
me.
one was it was two caribou that fought, and they locked antlers, and I think they both ended up dying. Yeah,
Yes, yes, those were
yeah,
two. The fox was perhaps, I won't repeat it, but the fox was perhaps, it's up there amongst the top 4 or 5
yeah. It's pretty
experiences in
cool.
nature I've ever had. Partly because I can't explain it at all.
Right.
You know, at least the Battle of the Caribou, you know what's happening, you know what
Sure.
will stand it. But I had another, circumstance. Again, it was a wet day. I had my rain gear, and I love keeping my field clothes for as long as I possibly can till they literally disintegrate.
Right.
And I was wearing my rain gear that I had used for years on the Seabird Islands when I was doing all that work, climbing down the cliffs and on ropes and so on. And that rain gear, of course, got covered repeatedly with guano, with bird droppings, and the acids turned it into a really hard, it wasn't any longer a very flexible rain gear.
Right.
And but I hated to get rid of it because all those memories of all those birds and the whales blowing underneath me and all this kind of
Mm,
stuff was all. I just had to smell them because the smell of the guano never goes out of anything.
sure.
And anyway, I was lying down because a group of caribou caught wind of me, so I just lying down straight like this in the gooity, was as we call it, the bog plants, and all of a sudden, I even closed my eyes and I heard this little scratching, scratching. Then I heard this really strange little gerbling kind of noise going on.
Hmm.
And I feel this little thing crawling out further and further. And of course, I try not to disturb it because I was fascinated by whatever this little thing was. I knew it wasn't a rat because where I was, it didn't make any sense.
Right.
So finally, when he got up really close to my beard, and my beard at that time was, down there, um, I could finally get a peek at him, and he was a little weasel.
Okay.
Now, if you read about the short-tailed weasel, you will find that they are said to be basically extremely nonverbal. That they don't have they don't have these little calls or twitters, say like a squirrel does
Sure.
or
Yeah.
something else does. But this little guy was making all these little gerbling little noises. They were low in tone, but he was making them. And he was making the entire circuit of me, probably not getting my human scent as much as he was getting that guano
Mm,
scent from the bird droppings. That's all I could figure.
sure.
And so I just sat there with him crawling over me and coming up, literally like this and looking in my face. And of course, I trying to remain as still as humanly possible. And he kept that up, not for long, maybe, I don't know, a minute and a half. I know at one point he got down in my, half his nose down in my boot, and then these little things are small, but they kill rabbits, right? So they got quite a little bite. So I was hoping that he would not decide to bite me, but he didn't anyway. And then he, of course, just left me. And again, like with the fox, I was left thinking, how many times has a human being ever had a totally wild. We were 500 miles from the nearest community if we were afoot. Has had that experience of this little wild animal crawling over them, almost talking to himself, saying, I could almost imagine him saying, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah.
It's not a log. It's not a dead animal, or maybe it is, or, what the hell is this? And I can imagine him going home and meeting his mate and saying, "Yeah, you never believe what I ran into today," And that kind of experience, just like the fox and the caribou that killed one another, and the young bull moose who continuously knocked the female off her feet. He was so inexperienced and frustrated in the rut. The whales that nearly had me drop off the edge of cliffs because they frightened me in the early morning with blowing their mist off all over me on those cliff edges. Those experiences, they change you.
Yeah.
You
absolutely.
You cannot be the same, and you cannot relate to the experiences of others very easily either.
Yes.
It's like my son says, and my son is in his 40s now, hard to believe, but my son says he can't explain it to anyone.
Right.
Even some of the experiences he had, like he just can't explain it. It's too distant from the experience of his friends. And
sure.
And he doesn't mean that in a mean-spirited way. He just means it's just pretty much impossible to be able to explain lying down and having a fully wild 500-pound woodland caribou with all his weaponry, walking literally over you. That's just not something that it's not easy to relate to,
No, not at all. And I know exactly what you mean. Anytime I've, whatever, if it's the most I've spent is a couple weeks, fully remote outdoors on a hunting trip. And coming back from that, it takes me, 3, 4, 5 days to sort of come back to being a normal person in society. And my girlfriend or whoever, friends, family, I can't really relate to them when I get back. It's like I just can't explain to you what I just experienced for the last 2 weeks, and it's a bit challenging because I think people come back and they're like, you seem a little off, you seem a little bit weird since you got back. But it's just you're trapped in that. I don't know. It's just a different world, and it like you said, it changes you for sure.
Well, I know exactly what you mean, and I'm glad you had that experience because it means that you immerse yourself. You see, that place to which you go is home.
Yeah.
That place to which you return is not. I mean, it may be your home of your family or your wife or your children or your parents or whatever. I don't. But that's a home that's been constructed.
Sure.
But that place to which you go, that's home. That's our evolutionary home. That's our biological home. That's the home that, we were born out of, we were born into. And it's for that reason that, we cannot let go. We cannot let go of the fire. We cannot let go of any of the ancient rituals that we have come to perpetuate in our life. We buy a house and we clear the land and we recreate the Serengeti.
Right.
The few trees, the open grass, the shrubbery. We have a barbecue, and because we're cooking the meat over an open fire, every guest that we have that comes to the barbecue comes and stares down at it and looks at it, drinks their beer or their water or whatever they're having. Nobody goes into your kitchen and looks at your oven for 2 hours
exactly,
waiting for that turkey to cook. Right?
Yeah.
Candles. We want to have a romantic or even a quiet, just a gentle dinner or a celebratory dinner at Christmas or something like that with our children. Candles are a big thing. Birthday cakes. We have to, why do we have candles on birthday cakes? I mean, we could have anything, right? We could have little rocks there to say how many years we are, but we have these little candles, right? All of these things are reminders to us that we are not home. We try to recreate as much as possible in the home we build, the home we came from. The antlers on our walls, the lights made of bone, the knives with the bone handles, the whatever it might be. And of course, the wild meat and the wild berries and the wild fruits and all of that are they're priceless to us. We may complain about the price of beef in the grocery store, but in fact, the wild meat we bring home is priceless.
Yep.
All of these things are realities. They're not fictions in your mind or my mind. They're truths, fundamental truths.
Yeah. I knew this was going to happen. I made this huge list of all these things I wanted to to talk to you about, and of course, run out of time. But we got another 10 minutes or so, Shane, and I wanted to.
Why don't we do a second half sometime?
Sure, let's do that. Before we close it out, though, I wanted you to talk about the Wild Harvest Initiative quickly.
Yeah.
And it's been cool because I think maybe the first time we had you on was 2016, 2017. That's very early on. So you were just starting to collect that data and look at it. 2019, you're kind of, getting into it. And I do all the editing for Sheep Fever with Wild Sheep Foundation's podcast.
Oh, yes.
So I've been able to kind of keep updated on everything you're doing there. But if you could just maybe share some standout data that you've discovered and compiled that you're excited about.
Sure, absolutely, and I'm glad you asked, because what's happening with the Wild Harvest Initiative. People are finally starting to understand it. That it's more about a way of life than it is even about compiling the numbers of meals, the numbers of pounds, and all of that. First of all, we've expanded now to Europe and to Southern and Eastern Africa. So this is a massive change.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Has recently occurred, and so we're going to be evaluating all of the wild meat harvest on that continent, and then in Southern and Eastern Africa.
Wow.
We've just submitted our second major high-level peer-reviewed, publication in the scientific journals. The scientists are taking this very seriously now, this recreational wild harvesting in North America that frankly they never even heard about before. And so we're breaking that news into the intellectual academic world, and people are saying, my God, this is absolutely unbelievable. The scale of this, we had absolutely no idea. We now know that we're harvesting about 61 to 63 million wild animals in the United States alone each and every year.
Wow.
That's generating billions of meals for American citizens at a time when 1 in 8 American citizens is facing some food challenge. I mean, that's the statistic from your own governments, right? That's and it's 1 in 5 in Canada, by the way. It's even worse.
Wow.
We have a situation where we now know, we've just done the analysis on, we wanted to build a database. We wanted to come up with how much wild meat was being harvested, then how many meals were being harvested. Then we wanted to go very methodically to what would it cost to replace that wild meat. So in the United States of America today, if hunting stopped tomorrow, it would cost $4.3 billion in a single year for American citizens to replace that wild meat by buying domestic meats at the stores in the proportions that Americans normally buy it, whether that's, pork, beef, chicken, this kind of thing. So billions of dollars a year that would be required. And more importantly, or just as importantly, the domestic livestock production system can't gear up that quickly to be able to produce that amount of food, overnight to sort of replace this. And now we're moving into the issue of the ecological costs. What does it cost ecologically to generate the domestic meats versus the non-costs that it takes to generate the wild meat in nature? With the wild meat in nature, we do not contribute except very little to the carbon output. We maintain the landscapes as they were. We capture and consume by our own means the healthiest wild food that the planet can offer us. We do not destroy the environment, and we share that wild food with an enormous number of people. Right. We've done surveys in 7 states now, and on the basis of that evidence with hunters, how much food do they share? We now know that the 14 to 16 million hunters in the United States share their wild food with up to 100 to 110 million more people. Now, suddenly something that's viewed as kind of a sideshow with, 4% of the population involved in it. Now, all of a sudden, you have 110 or 120 million people, in some sense, part of that traffic of wild meat. And if we're looking for social license, if we're looking for a public that wants to support us, if we have 100 to 110 million people eating that wild meat that we share with them, they're on our side. And that makes an enormous difference. So we're really making incredible strides with this now. It's just growing literally all the time. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's over a decade of work now,
yes,
right?
It is.
Yeah.
And it took that long, of course. And I know that's slow for some people, but you have to get the data. You have to get it right. You have to verify it. You have to make absolutely certain that what you're coming out with is correct. And we've presented this now at, the IUCN World Congress this year. We had a big pavilion around wild harvest with the Oppenheimer Foundation, the JAMA Foundation, the Wild Sheep Foundation, and so on, all based on the wild harvest principle, the wild harvest notion. It's now brought into the work plan for the Cooperative Partnership and Sustainable Wildlife Management, a big international consortium. It's now a formal part of the next 3-year work plan for those organizations. I mean, it's just gone from something that was here to something now that's being spread everywhere. Yeah. And we're going to be coming out, so stay tuned, with a lot of short vignettes, a lot of social media, and possibly even a couple of films or two about this now to really promote it. And hopefully we can do more with you on your podcast with respect to that, because I really enjoy speaking with you on this.
Yeah, likewise, Shane. And open door. Come on here anytime you want. I'm more than happy to have you. I always look forward to talking to you, and I'm surprised it's actually been this long since I've had you on. So I do appreciate it. And for anybody who wants to like a deep dive on the Wild Harvest Initiative, you and Keith, it was episode 74 of Sheep Fever. You guys went on a deep conversation there.
We did.
So people can check that out. But yeah, come back anytime. And are you going to be in Kelowna for the Geo ABC convention?
I wish I was, but I cannot be because it overlaps entirely with my commitments at the North American Wildlife Conference. And I saw Scott and Mike and others at the Wild Sheep meeting. And I said, if you'd moved it by a week, it would have been fine. But I mean, they had their time slot. And
sure.
It's really unfortunate. And where are you based again?
I'm in Kelowna. So I was going to say, if you were going to be here for the convention, that we could do a podcast over a beer rather than over the internet. So
I'm going to take another look at those dates. I mean, they overlap almost entirely. I just don't know if I could even get up for a day or not. But I would definitely have come to the 60th if I wasn't otherwise booked. That's going to be fabulous, actually. Kelowna's fabulous, for God's sake.
Yeah, I love it here. It's 6 degrees and sunny right now.
Yeah.
There's people out running in shorts. It's crazy.
Now, you had a really warm summer, though, didn't you, last year?
It wasn't too bad in comparison, because in previous years we had the heat dome and
okay, it was the previous
it was
years.
Up in like the 40s. It was unbearable, and we had fires 2 years back. So last summer was actually not too bad.
Okay, it was the previous summers I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Anyway, my good friend, thank you very much for this. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Shane. I appreciate it. We'll keep in touch. And like I said, you're welcome to come on here anytime.
Thanks. Take care of yourself.
There you go. Episode 200. I really hope that you took my advice and you sat down and listened to that and visualized all of those stories, because they are incredible. Shane and I were chatting a little bit afterwards, and he wants to get his podcast going again. And I said, you should do that, man, because your stories are absolutely incredible, and they deserve to be recorded and preserved. So if you agree, hit him up and say, Shane, you should do a podcast, because we want more of this. I certainly do, but even if he doesn't, I'm just going to keep inviting him back until he's told every story. So maybe this will become the Mike and Shane podcast. We'll see what happens. I'm going to read Cody's email here. Cody was the winner of the Lynx knife from North Arm Knives. He said, I hope it's Shane Mahoney. He got that right because of his truly amazing storytelling and voice. Hunting feels like what I was put on earth to do. It's something I am incredibly passionate about and try my best to share with all people. I have had many conversations with vegetarians and vegans about why hunting is sustainable and better way to get meat, and have shared food with several of my patients at work and had multiple coworkers say I've changed the way they think of hunters. Thanks for your work on the podcast. Awesome, Cody. I love that. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate. Our job as hunters is to promote what we do in the best way possible. So I certainly appreciate that. Before we go, I got all sappy on the last episode, so I won't do much more of that. But I do want to send out a huge thank you again to the Wild Sheep Foundation for their continued support of this podcast. And of course, North Arm Knives, they're the OG. They've been with us for a long time. Mike was the one who reached out with the idea to do the giveaway. So I really appreciate that. And I hope Cody enjoys the knife. But we'll be back with another episode next week. Thanks, guys. Cheers.